Welcome back. I hope you all are enjoying all of our amazing content so far today. Next up, we have Kumar, Executive Director of Product Management at Phenom, and Ilya Goldin, a Principal Data Scientist at Phenom. They're here to give an amazing talk about how AI is impacting HR. Please join me in welcoming Kumar and Ilya to the stage.
Thanks a lot, Rachel. And hey, everyone. Really excited to be here talking about the impact of AI on talent ecosystem.
Great to be here.
Awesome. So let's get started here. I want to quickly talk about why we are here. Talent has entered a golden era right now, with a lot of companies trying to accelerate their hiring process. And in order to do that effectively, it's really important to leverage AI and automation to its core in a meaningful fashion to get some reasonable outcomes. And today we are going to just talk about that. And before we get started, a quick introduction of Phenom. Phenom is a talent experience management platform, the leader that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning for various aspects and experiences of the platform to help drive talent to its right places. So from a Phenom perspective, our purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right job. And that's why we exist. And it's important to understand that to hit this number, to really help everybody, it's important to touch almost everybody in who's eligible to get a job in this context. And that's why we exist as a company. And that's a major task. And let's actually talk about the problem that we have at hand. If you think about talent economy, the talent economy has undergone major tech and societal shifts. If you consider COVID and really look at the behavior of talent, like how the consumer behavior has drastically changed, the expectations of talent have changed, and the way they interact and get jobs have significantly changed over a period of time. Now, when you think about talent markets, the talent markets are tightening. So if you think about frontline workers, and hiring them, the focus for companies is to really hire at a quick pace and in a very cost optimized fashion. But if you think about the data that's available for hiring this data set, for example, skill-based matching is very limited. But if you think about knowledge workers, it's all a boost on growing your network and focusing on quality and long-term retention. So if you think of certain industries and domains for frontline, certain industries and domains are thriving because of current situation and the recovering economy, while other industries are recovering. And similarly, we have the same experience for the knowledge workers as well. If you think of what you're seeing, what we are witnessing today, if you see Burger King, for example, you've seen ads like this all over the place. Certain industries are desperate to find talent, and they're desperate to find talent quick. So there are a lot of interesting initiatives and opportunities that are being shown up to attract talent in a very diverse way. And certain pioneers in this space have completely optimized their hiring process. It could be certain companies are automating a lot of that hiring, like optimizing their apply flow, optimizing the backend aspects of it in a very efficient form. So now we have a massive drop in employment ever since the early stages of lockdown. And we have the lowest unemployment at this point in time. So we have a lot of candidates who are coming back looking for jobs at this point in time. But this makes it a golden age for talent, right? And the talent ecosystem. But if you think about the real problems from a talent perspective, the talent shortage is high, but the skill stability is extremely low. but it's still a candidate market. Now, from a hiring manager perspective, hiring managers still have very high expectations and they expect a lot out of candidates, and they're not evolving as fast as they'd like based on the business models. And recruiters are really stuck in between trying to meet these expectations of candidates with the expectations of hiring managers to hire the right talent. And employees are ever wondering how they can really be engaged within the organization. Now, if you think about how technology is evolving in this space and how consumer expectations are evolving and how enterprises are adopting these shifts, technology is evolving at a rapid pace. There's a lot of tools and technologies that use latest frameworks and artificial intelligence that can help solve some of the problems that we've outlined. And consumers also expect this sort of alignment to technology. So as and when technology is developed, our consumers are looking at adopting these technology to solve those problems. But the biggest challenge is there's a struggle in meeting these expectations to experiences. So what that means is the adoption of these technologies is not as high as we'd expect, although there are certain pioneers who are adopting and leading some of these experiences. If you think about the top problem with HR, we have the talent management team that's responsible for bringing in talent into the company, the hiring managers and employees, and all of them are operating in silos. So a hiring manager can be connected to the employee, the TA is connected to hiring manager, and the employees could be connected to talent management, but it's not done in a very effective and an optimized fashion. And if you think about hiring, there are 4 different personas that are involved in this process. We have the candidates, we have the employees, we have recruiters and managers, and each one of them are looking for a different experience on throughout this hiring process journey, and everybody's expecting a much more personalized and optimized outcome. But how to make all of this work is a very important notion. And how can you use technology to boost that collaboration, that effectiveness across these personas becomes very important. So let's take this example. If you think about hiring talent, you can think about a shoe store, for example, and you can see the correlations. So in any company, let's say this organization has about 10,000 employees. On an average, there's a need to grow the business, and there's about 10% of your employees that need to grow as well from a hiring perspective. There's a 10% turnover, so employees leaving the company, and another 10% looking to go into different roles from an internal mobility standpoint. So now, for a 10,000 employee company, you have about 3,000 new hires that you need to make both internally and externally. And if you're looking at the 2,000 hires that you need to make externally, then you have about 500,000 candidates who are engaging with the brand, engaging with the career site, engaging with social media campaigns, or talking to a bot, or some form of interaction that's happening on the front end, right? If you look at the open jobs, we usually get about 250 resumes per job, and that volume is huge. And that's the amount of volume and engagement you need to fill in those 2,000 positions. So now when we think about the front end experience and the back end experience, that's how we really differentiate between the two. The front end experience is all about serving 500,000 candidates and probably about 10,000 employees who are looking and interacting with the system. And all this will go to your recruitment team, your HR team, which is typically about a 200 people team for a 10,000 employee company. And specifically for TA, which is probably the largest wing of HR, would have about 100 recruiters. So if you think about the equation, 100 recruiters are responsible for hiring about 3,000 people, both internally and externally, and that needs to happen in a very efficient way. And to support this recruiting process, you have your hiring managers, and you have about 10,000 hiring managers. For over 1,000 hiring managers who are involved in this process. It could be interviews, it could be evaluation, it could be profile reviews or offer decision, and they are involved in some form or the other. But now if you look at the backend experience, to hire these many people, about 100 recruiters and 1,000 hiring managers are involved, and they are severely constrained from a bandwidth perspective. So to solve their problem, automation and AI is super important, right? And especially when you're looking at hiring managers are concerned about not just hiring, they're concerned about employee growth and retention and performance. And on top of that, they have their day job and they have some business outcomes that they have to deliver. And it becomes super important to deliver AI and technology that can help optimize for these personas. And now, if you think about how AI and automation and technology in general can be deployed for these different personas, we look at candidates and employees as front stage or front end, and you can deploy AI from an overall personalization perspective. So AI really helps drive efficiency at scale. You have a lot of candidates and employees interacting with your brand. How do you personalize their experience so that they can look at the right jobs and interact the right way and have a great experience? That's what AI should be prioritized for. Now, when you're looking at the backend, backend, as I mentioned, is all focused around productivity and automation, and AI can really help from that perspective. And this is true for any company in this world. Look at Amazon, for example. You have your consumers who are coming into the e-commerce site and getting personalized recommendations on what products they can buy. But the warehouse, the fulfillment centers are completely optimized from an AI and automation perspective. So to summarize this, the front-end experience for employees and candidates are using a different strategy called experience design, and the back-end is optimized for automation. We call that as intelligent service design. And to support these deployments and onboarding of technology at this level of scale, from Phenom, we've introduced the talent experience management platform. So in this platform, the whole idea is to really connect every persona in the hiring process and really collect every single interaction in one ecosystem so that we can make meaningful outcomes and insights and inferences out of all these interactions in an effective fashion. So in order to deploy this technology, it's not just enough to really look at your past data, your past hiring decisions, and really deploy an AI or an automation engine just based on that. It's important to really have something larger, a global context, which is really what the industry looks like, what's the change in, what are the trends in terms of new roles and new skills that are emerging? What are the trends and skills that are declining? So it's important to understand that context. Then it's also important to understand the industry context, customer context, a department context, a team context, and even a user context to deliver that optimal experience. And in order to do that, we have built massive graph technologies that power our AI systems. So with over 1 billion plus candidates and over 400 million jobs that we've used to train this massive network, we can really understand what a job title is, what a skill is, what's the relationship between the two, what's important for what industry, and having that out of the box pre-trained knowledge becomes extremely effective in deploying these technologies into an enterprise. So the learning curve for the AI and automation becomes extremely low with this pre-trained, pre-context driven models, and it's easier to baseline to your enterprise. And that's what we also do as well. We build what are called as enterprise talent graph, which really not only understand an enterprise context based on the data that's available in the context, but also records every interaction that happens between various personas within the ecosystem and feeds that back to the AI model that can learn and baseline to an enterprise context. So that's really the power of deploying technologies that are much more holistic and has an understanding of the context and what type of AI optimization needs to be deployed by every user or persona in the talent ecosystem. So at Phenom, AI powers every experience. So if you look at this slide, the AI layer that you see at the bottom really has a lot of models, a lot of new innovative technology that Ilya is going to walk us through that really powers each of our experiences. So some of the AI components are really broken into, let's say, personalization that really runs across each experience. We have conversational AI as a huge component to our AI ecosystem that's deployed in various different ways for each experience that we have. We have insights related to scoring and matching, and automation that's deployed in different ways in different contexts. So with this automation and AI being the core of the ecosystem and data that is connected and managed in a central way, we have the ability to deploy this technology very rapidly that can provide very meaningful outcomes for enterprises without spending too much of resources in training models and really configuring technology to work for them. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Ilya, who can walk us through a little bit of how we use AI and develop models within Phenom.
Thank you for that introduction, Kumar. Yeah, certainly a huge platform, a huge number of features that we could talk about. We'll glance at a couple of interesting examples that really constitute kind of a core set of technologies that this platform supports. Let's go on to the next slide. So when we think about applications of AI in this talent experience management platform, there are certainly technologies that are more relevant to each individual experience. So let's take the candidate experience, CX here on the left. Candidate experience is essentially the career site for a company. Right. So on a career site, you want to be able to browse jobs that are available. You want to search across them, but you also want that experience to be personalized. So search is a core technology. Natural language is a core technology. And you want search that's not, reminiscent of the good old search engines of 20 years ago. You want search that's modern and responsive to your intents. You want search that recognizes your intent even when it's not expressed explicitly. For example, I'm a data scientist and maybe I search for a data science position on a career site. I would want results for relevant jobs to include not just data science or data scientist. I would want machine learning. I would want artificial intelligence. I would want other kinds of technologies that are relevant in other kinds of skills to be responsive to my query. I would want my experience to be further personalized beyond search, right? So maybe the system knows something about me as a user of the career site that enables it to provide personalized recommendations, perhaps based on where I'm located, perhaps based on skills that I've told the system that I have, perhaps based on other contextual factors about how I'm using the career site, right? There are a lot of inputs that are relevant to providing a personalized recommendation. And then further key feature, an AI-based feature on a career site is dialogue systems, chatbots, right? So a candidate who's using a career site using a chatbot is really going beyond browsing, beyond searching. There's a kind of a dialogue management that needs to happen, and this dialogue management can elicit additional useful information from the candidate and provide useful information to the candidate. For example, information that is not easily available directly through a search of jobs. Analogously, there is a career site for employees, but of course, when we are working with employees and the employee experience, we may know more about them than candidates just coming, so to speak, off the street. And this additional information is both an opportunity to provide recommendations that are more personalized and more relevant. And it's also an opportunity to provide employees additional features that we can't really provide to candidates. So for example, career pathing. Instead of just saying, here's a job that might be relevant to your interest, we can help an employee plan an entire career path. And this career path within the same company could really cement the tenure of an employee at a company, because they can see themselves developing professionally, not just into the next role, but into the next multiple roles in an entire career. If you think about the recruiter perspective, the recruiter experience, there are plenty of relevant features for recruiters as well. And on the next slide, I'll go into some detail in the AI discovery and candidate fit scores. So yeah, let's go on to the next slide, please. So the AI discovery use case is really kind of interesting, and it's a critical value add for recruiters. AI discovery means we have multiple pools of candidates, and we want to recommend to the recruiter, or somehow surface to the recruiter, that some candidates from these candidate pools are an especially good fit for some job. So candidate fit score means that we can assign some kind of relevance score to candidates who are not necessarily even expressing direct interest in some job, right? They may only be leads from a career site, but we might still know enough about them to say, oh, this candidate who is browsing the career site, or, browsed the career site yesterday, could actually be a really good fit for a job, maybe even a job that they never looked at and know about, but nonetheless, our AI models can discover that there's this connection there. Employee discovery says that people who are currently at your company could be a great fit for some jobs. CRM rediscovery does this for past applicants or past candidate leads who are already in your system. Cloud suggestions does the same kind of thing for people that are not yet in your ecosystem, but that have made their information public in some way. And so there's enough information about me out there on the web, for instance, to compute some kind of a recommendation or relevance to a job, even if I've never heard of some company, right? And so we can think about discovering candidates from all of these pools, and a bunch of technologies are needed to make that happen. You need to parse the natural language of a job. You need to parse the natural language of a resume. And then based on the features you extract from jobs and resumes, you need to perform matching. Next slide, please. What's complicated is that not all features are relevant when matching all kinds of candidates to all kinds of jobs. So Kumar gave the example of frontline versus knowledge work. In knowledge work, where you have a lot of skill information from the job or from the candidate, you can perform matching on that basis. And so those skill-oriented features become really critical. Next slide. In the retail industry, by contrast, where you may not necessarily have the same kind of information, you may about say skills, because the skills of the job in frontline work may be taught to you on the job. So what you have on your resume is not necessarily critical in matching the candidate to the job. So you end up having to use other information. Thank you. Next slide. And so these kinds of AI components, natural language processing, personalization, recommendation technologies, dialogue systems, the enterprise talent graph, they're really a foundational layer of AI technologies that support the entire TXM platform, as well as other tools like analytics and integration that are other critical building blocks of the stack. Next slide. So this allows us to think about costs. This allows us to think about how these technologies can drive down the costs for the enterprise in terms of lowering the cost of having a bad experience for an employee, lowering the cost of having a vacancy or high turnover, lowering the cost of growing the organization. Next slide. And so that is how we deliver AI and experiences supported by AI at scale to millions and millions of people from a variety of companies across the globe. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, thank you so much. Audience, it's time to make your way to your next sessions. On your way, don't forget to stop and check out all of our amazing exhibitors.